But that meant there must be a destiny where he survived and won, right? Otherwise, what was the point? And with that, the book's pages fluttered back once more to the beginning, and the clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Or so a scholar in the mountains had told him. Surely the weapon that banished the lost gods could defeat the Emperor. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion. But could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens? Lapino. Apparently, the Mad Rabbit had sold a Pegasus that he did not exactly own. Lapino always wiggled out of trouble, given time. But he was out of time. Lapino's frantic message said that the Ravens were going to kill him for being a rebel spy. And that he had a clever plan. If the fleet reached him first, they'd string him up for that. Never mind the winged horse. Or so Lapino had told him over the far speaker anyway. Lapino had apparently managed to confuse the judge by arguing that he hadn't actually stolen the winged horse. He'd only sold it. But wait, where was the prison? The village was empty. Had everybody fled the Ravens? People were frightened these days. Just 2 weeks past, Renato had sneaked through an empty town and listened to the Ravens caw about the Emperor's new taste in ritual sacrifice. I wonder what I could make with all these sword crafting materials, thought Renato. Renato thought of the Iblis stone and shivered. He had no business messing with ancient, cruel artifacts. What he needed was his friends around him. Clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose. Well, he always wanted to do that. Firewalls only let you through if they think you're hot enough. This stone was incredibly valuable. Bernardo could sense it. Also, it still had its price tag. Hey, what do ravens say when they die? Never mind. I'll wait. Ravens were landing everywhere. The advanced guard. He'd better get moving. If they got to Lupino first, they'd eat him for breakfast. Or a snack. Ravens weren't picky. If they got hungry, they sometimes forgot to interrogate their prisoners. Even top spies like Lupino. Well, unless he really was a traitor, obviously. Then they'd probably pin a medal on his chest. His fault. They looked so breakable. Dirty and bloody, Bernardo finally reached Lupino. The rabbit was practicing his shuffle. Bernardo recognized the cards. It was Lupino's favorite deck. Oh, I thought you were in danger. I am. The ravens are coming. Oh, the prison thing. Right, yeah, see, this guard owed me 53 ducats, so we made a deal. They're very reasonable people, actually, for weasels. Now, I got a brilliant plan to kidnap Zenobia. We capture Zenobia, we find out what she knows. And that's the whole war right there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Capture the Emperor's greatest general, who also happened to be a deadly sorcerer, and oh, his only daughter? That would be worth it. On the other hand, he could still get to the core of the Sky Ripper, even if he couldn't get the whole thing. It must have great power. To make the Sky Ripper, the Transcendent Emperor had wrapped an armature around the eye of a god. Bernardo had already let that armature slip away to save Lapino's life. But even its core, the eye torn from a god, surely they could fashion a great weapon from that. The core of the Sky Ripper? Lapino's excited. That's an actual thing that we could just go and get. You've been busy. He sure had. Bernardo told him all the things he'd been up to. Soon they got to talking about old times, about wages they'd won and lost, and scrapes they'd barely got out of. It was good to be back with his friend. Bernardo grinned. He had a very good feeling about this. It's beautiful here, thought Bernardo. It was nice to be back with his old war buddy. All right. Lapino was a traitor. But still, it was good company. Sharp? Check. Pointy? Check. Flexible? Check. What else do you need in a sword? There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time. Once you try it, you're hooked. Bernardo felt wrong all over. He could feel an almost palpable sickness in the air. And if the land could have tumors, they would look like these monstrous crystals. The forest was quieter than it had been. There were insects, but few birds, if you didn't count the ravens. Bernardo smelled sick animals and dying ones, but no healthy ones. And getting a bad feeling about this, Bernardo thought. Maybe Lapino was right. Maybe he should have kidnapped Zenobia instead of coming here. This couldn't be good for global warming. Have you ever felt you were just going round in circles? Bernardo felt like that. As he held the radiant icosahedron, Bernardo felt queasy, like dozens of tiny worms were nibbling his insides. It wasn't healthy to be so close to the eye of a god. How could he use it? He could take it to the observatory. The scientists there could tell him how to harness its ancient power. But honestly, Bernardo ached to get away from it. He brought the core back with him to the Farfarer. But honestly, Bernardo ached to be rid of it. "Tell you what," said Lupino. "I'll take it to the observatory. You attack the Imperial outpost." The Imperial outpost was a vital communications node. Taking it could shatter the Empire's ability to coordinate. And it would be full of secret plans and maps and maybe even rebel prisoners. It was a good target for a hero like Bernardo. But what if this was a ruse so that Lupino could get the core into the hands of the Empire? Was Bernardo ready to take that risk? Maybe it was better if he brought the core to the scientists himself. Lupino was a touchy rabbit. Bernardo knew that. "You're brave, I know," Bernardo said. "But this is what I was hired to do." "Oh, well, at least let me run ahead and warn them you're coming." Bernardo wondered if Lupino was up to no good. What if the rabbit warned the Empire instead? Oh, but Lupino wouldn't betray him like that. Not again. Before it'd been a fluke, right? They finished the trip to the Nexus in silence. He would offer Lupino a chance to betray him, or not to. His old friend deserved another chance to prove true. "All right," Bernardo said. "Go." As Bernardo watched Lupino vanish on the horizon, he could feel nausea building in him. He felt ill. Could his knees really be aching this much? But how could he have handed the core off to Lupino? That was a recipe for disaster. Smashing things was fun. He was sort of yanking his own chain, wasn't he? present? For me? Renato felt worse. All his joints were aching now. He'd been through beatings that felt better than this. So the core had a kind of poison that could harm you without even touching you. That's new. Well, it had power. The rebellion needed something with power. And how was this any worse than a sword wound? Well, a death by sword was sudden and fair. This was just squalid. A piecemeal death, like old age. A crafting bench. Renato wondered what he could make with it. The platform used a hybrid propulsion system fueled by anti-gravity and wishful thinking. Renato was dead tired. Then he was just dead. The observatory was a burning hulk. Dead scientists everywhere. Renato found the mad rabbit cowering under a desk. The ravens, they must have known we were coming, said Lupino. How did you... Well, see, I was doing a card trick with my lucky deck, and I kind of bobbled the cards, so I went under the desk to gather them up, and boom! I guess we'll have to take the car straight to the secret base. Renato wasn't sure he believed that, but Lupino was talking so fast. He always seemed to make sense. The secret rebel base. Yes. They had engineers there. But wait. Calaveras, the sage in the mountains. Maybe he would know what to do with the naked core. The core was killing him. He needed help. The sage Calaveras had given him the maps to find the armature and the core. If anyone knew the true name of the Transcendent Emperor, if anyone knew how to assemble the Sky Ripper, Calaveras did. If anyone could heal Reynardo and render the core safe, at least to its bearer, surely it was he. The base of the mountain was the only safe place for a landing. He would have to continue on foot, muscles aching. Calaveras was a scholar, not a doctor. Could he really save Reynardo from the poison radiating from the lost god's eye he was so recklessly carrying? Reynardo wondered idly if people who had built these poles had really, really long tentacles. Thought, Reynardo? Oh, this was not a fun way to die. Even if he survived. No one would write ballads about the fox whose knees ached forever, would they? Not unless he paid for it. And he hated paying for publicity. Hero wall, hero sword, ice wall, ice cube. Reynardo had been the terror of the sandcastles when he was 2. It was chilling walking through the living mountains. There was always noise up ahead. Insects, birds, the croak and flutter of ravens arranging ambushes. But close by, there was only the breeze and the trickle of melting snow. As if every living thing was holding its breath for his poisonous burden to move on. Reynardo wondered if it wasn't cheaper to build bridges and stairs. Bernardo was making himself dizzy. Fun! Calaveras was a renowned scientist before he was forced into exile. Now he was practically the last scientist, and he was Bernardo's last hope.
The core! Splendid!
Croaked Calaveras.
Where's the armature?
Right, I was kind of hoping you wouldn't need it.
No, I don't. It's just a professional interest. We've got much better prismatics than the old TE ever did.
So Calaveras was an arcane engineer. He fussed at the core all day. He wrapped it with silver chains, and in front of it, he placed a huge, round ruby, so that it looked like a monstrous, floating eye. So, what is it?
Yeah, I call it the oculum. It's my very first death ray.
And it won't poison me?
Oh, no, it's completely safe now.
Anything I should watch out for?
Yeah, try to avoid pointing at any mirrors.
As he loaded the oculum onto the Farfarer, Bernardo was a little concerned about Calaveras. People who were utterly sure of themselves, he had found, were either experts or horribly wrong. Or both. But Bernardo only needed to fire the oculum once. He only needed to destroy one ship, the Emperor's ship, and the war was over. Bernardo plunged into the Imperial fleet. He felt the oculum humming. He no longer felt sick. This was going to be fun. Or at least, it was going to be over. Bernardo resisted the temptation to fire the oculum until the time came. He could sense its arcane energies yearning to escape the sage's wrappings. But it wasn't eating him alive. So that was a plus. He felt good about himself. He'd saved a friend, he'd helped the rebels, he'd relied on himself, but he'd listened to others. He felt like the right sort of hero. Wise, yet decisive. Calaveras had been so sure it would work. Maybe he could fire it just a few times. No harm in that, right? But only when he absolutely needed to. Ooh, the portal led right into the middle of the fleet. It was a glaring weakness in the defense. Take a leap of faith, said the inscription. I can get a good smoothie around here. Reynardo's arm was getting tired. The core was no longer eating at him, but he still felt weak. His stamina was shot. But he had the oculum. When the ravens swarmed him, it would sometimes fire its death ray. It seemed to be warming up too, firing more and more often. Maybe he should let it cool off. Yeah, he decided to stop using it entirely. He wished there were more pylons he could use the hook on. He really needed to construct additional pylons. This was a roundabout way of getting there. Odd. The oculum was still hot to the touch. He almost thought it was getting even hotter. Well, that was ridiculous, of course. Anyway, he'd only to fire it one more time, and then he could chuck the whole contraption into the abyss. And the Emperor's ship was now in range. Reynardo squinted. He could make out the line of ravens protecting the ship. Zenobia in front, conjuring. And on the deck, yes, that was His Imperial Majesty, pacing in his golden armor. Reynardo lined up his shot and fired. Caught in the beam, the ship burst into flames. The ravens and Zenobia exploded. The Emperor, too, exploded. Reynardo waited for the beam to stop, but it only got brighter, and the oculum hotter. Frantic, Reynardo pulled the oculum towards the abyss. The ruby burst into flames. The shiny metal casing glowed, then melted. That was good. Now the core could cool off, right? Reynardo ran. The blast incinerated him instantly, along with both fleets. The shockwave could be felt across all Erda. That winter, with neither Empire nor rebels to rule them, the islands slid into banditry. And so began the Second Age of Darkness. And, just like that, he was alive again, and back on the Farfarer, still fleeing burning Ubar. The book was still open before him. So, the book was a portal. It took you to the future, when your destinies would branch. He had failed and died 3 times, but he'd learned another true thing. The core was powerful, but dangerous if used improperly. But he was starting to feel like he was getting the hang of this. There was a way through to victory. He could feel it. He just had to keep running the path of Destinies. With that, the book fluttered back to the beginning, and he fell into it. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renato knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong, but he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lupino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lupino had betrayed the rebellion. But could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens? Every child knew about the Sky Ripper. The Transcendent Emperor had buried its pieces deep. And then, this Emperor's horrific sacrifices had brought it back to the surface. Renato wasn't exactly sure how to use the legendary weapon. But surely, there must be some way to do it without provoking another catastrophe. Had he, somehow, summoned the long-lost components of the legendary weapon out of the deep places of the Earth? It was more than Renato could fathom. But if he could find a legendary weapon, he would use it. As he set foot on the island, Renato couldn't help feeling a bit curious. Was Lupino still waiting to be rescued? No. He was probably drinking champagne with the Ravens. Then, did rabbits. Renato felt oddly thirsty. Had he chosen the Sky Ripper? Renato never made plans that required constant vigilance. He was a hero. He didn't think too much. He just went with his gut and hoped it all worked out. The Sky Ripper was a long shot. He'd have to devote himself to it. No side journeys, no rescuing old friends. That was against his nature. Could he stick with it? Sleep tight, thought Renato. The people who had built this castle, did they even know what monstrous weapon lay hidden within their walls? The Sky Ripper could destroy anything it touched. Or so the legend said. As the Transcendent Emperor had fought the lost gods, thousands had died. But Renato had been through wars. The only merciful war was a short one. Every day he was getting better and better. That is a very cool sword, thought Renato. No, seriously. He couldn't feel his paw anymore. not everyone knew how to use magical gems. Of course, not everyone had magical gem gauntlets like he did. Stay away from the other guy's sword, you know? Well, the eyes have had it. There was a radiance at the end of a long, dark tunnel. Mother, he thought? Taylor was going to charge for all the holes in his clothes. This is why heroes are called dashing, Renato thought. See? Dashing? Get it? There it was. Skyripper's armature. The stuff that dreams are made of. Engineers' dreams, anyway. The device was intricate. No one alive had the skill to make a thing like it. How was it part of a weapon at all? He'd have to ask a scientist. But first, he'd get the second piece. Skyripper had a heart, a core that had come to rest on the next island. Well, there was another island he could reach. Zenobia had just invaded it with her father's Raven battalions. She must be encamped there still. But fighting Zenobia now, that made no sense at all. He'd already sacrificed one friend to get this armature, was it? He didn't need to hurry to face her. She would find him. Renato asked himself why he changed course to confront Zenobia. He'd no idea. Sometimes he would just do things, and he could never figure out why he'd done them. Usually, they worked out. After all, he was a hero. The truth is, though, he wanted to see her, wasn't it? It had been a dozen years since Swordfu School. He'd followed every rumor about her, every scrap of news. Not that he still loved her. After all, she was his enemy. No, it was solely because know your enemy. But it would be great to see her, even if they faced off across sword points as they'd done so many times at school. The world was a less interesting place without her. Hoped his hook didn't break. Should have faked left and then gone left, he thought. And then, he never thought again. There had to be something useful in these things, didn't there? Ooh, what's there? His sword food teacher used to say power gems were cheating. Stupid old fart. He couldn't do worse with Zenobia than he'd done with the core, could he? Who are you looking at? Oh, right. No one. Renato wasn't entirely sure how he was going to capture Zenobia. She'd be expecting him. And he didn't have Lapino to cook up a clever plan. Why was it again that he hadn't got the core? Maybe because the results tended to be disastrous. These streets were familiar. The Swordfish School was closed now, but he had been down that street 1,000 times. He knew that pub. He knew that alley. He knew the alley behind it much too well. No wonder Zenobia had chosen to invade this island herself. This chest was filled with reprints of the entire Sandman series. Reprints? God, what was the point of collecting those? Ooh, and there was something else. Felt fat for little, but these islands are short of trash cans. Renato slinked through Zenobia's ship, making no sound at all. Where were her guards? Finally, he reached her bedroom. She was curled up on her bed. Oh, he'd forgotten how beautiful she was. How sleek, how soft. He tapped her on the shoulder with his sword. She vanished, and he suddenly noticed he couldn't move except his mouth. In fact, soon he couldn't keep his mouth shut. He told Zenobia everything. Skyripper, the Iblistone, even where the secret rebel base was, until he was hoarse. It was some kind of truth spell. A talky truth spell. She called her father by Farspeaker Toad and filled His Majesty in.
But why didn't he get the core?
Croaked the Farspeaker in something like His Majesty's croak. Because I missed you, darling. Renato grinned. He doesn't even know why, frowned Zenobia.
That makes no sense. It's a trap,
shouted the Emperor.
I'll meet you at the outpost, and I'll bring my interrogators.
If Renato came face to face with the Emperor, maybe he could assassinate him. But maybe it would be smarter and safer to turn Zenobia against her father. What are you doing? Asked Zenobia. Did you ever wonder why the Emperor adopted you? He asked her. She shook her head. He told her. His Majesty wanted to bring the lost gods back. They could make him an eater of souls, an immortal. But to seal his bargain with them, he needed a sacrifice. Someone who truly loved him. She was stunned. Furious. You're lying. Under a truce spell? It's a trick. You can't prove that. Take me to the observatory, and I will. What kind of proof could you possibly have? She said as they landed on the Nexus. Your father ritually sacrificed a village. And he left witnesses? The scientists resurrected one. Well, it's not really alive, but it can talk. A true witness. She frowned. The dead can't lie. Well, I bet they could. They just don't have any reason to. She nodded grimly. You go on ahead. I don't want the Ravens to see me. He could learn new skills. If only he'd take the time to figure out which. What were these poles, exactly? Parking meters from the time of the lost gods? She caught up with him. Don't you think I'd know if my father wanted to invoke the lost gods? Would he tell you? No. Would you help him? No. I'd burn his books. Why do you adopt a stray cat? You don't ask a thing like that. No, not when there's no good answer, she said, her whiskers twitching. The Emperor had learned enough secrets from Renato to crush the rebellion. It would be a fair trade if the scientists could convince Zenobia to change sides. This thing really needed a roof.
danced around the room yelling, oh yeah, that's how we do it. It was something he liked to do, but only after he'd killed all the witnesses.
Well, they really needed to redecorate anyway. The observatory was a burning hulk. Dead scientists and black feathers everywhere. The ravens had burned the reanimated witness to cinders. Renato was stunned. There goes my proof. These were scientists, not rebels, Zenobia said, upset. Why would he do this? I don't know. Let's go to the fleet and ask him. Yes. I'll meet you on the mountains. There's something I have to get first. But could he afford to meet her in the mountains? He'd given the Empire the location of the secret rebel base. They would need rescuing. Why was he going to meet up with her? Wasn't it more important to rescue the Rebel Council from the almost certain Imperial attack? Why was he in this war anyway? Was it really to fight the good fight, or did he just want to see her again? One of these days, Renato thought, I should really figure out my motives before I pounce. Nah. Was it true? Was he on this adventure just to see Zenobia again? The Imperial heir was not an easy cat to see. Well, she'd ignored all his Kwanzaa gifts. And on the other paw, trying to get a date by joining a war against your intended was, let's say, pretty optimistic. But on the back paw, thought Renato, yes, it sounded exactly like him. Good, I'm so glad we had this little chat, he told himself.
He felt like Tarzan.
It was a bit windy up here. There were a lot of dead ravens along the side of the road. Someone had rampaged through here on a killing spree. What had Zenobia gone to get? He had a chilling feeling it was the Iblis stone. Zenobia was level-headed. A stone could make anyone bloodthirsty. You could tell her style from the blade work on the dead birds. With materials like this, he could probably make a really nice pair of barbecue tongs. Or even a sword.
Renato, smash!
Renato wondered what he should do when he found Zenobia. What could he do if she had the Iblis stone? He reached the summit, expecting no one. But there she was, steaming, pacing. "I'm gonna kill him," she said. "I'm gonna kill all his ravens, and then him, and then his family, and all the eggs and tadpoles. And then I'm gonna burn down their pond." "Did you go and get the Iblis stone?" "You see, all these ravens I killed. So much power." "Yeah. Great," Renato said. "You really want power from a demonic rock?" You want the stone, don't you?" Not really." "Good. I'd rather not have to kill you." He told her he loved her, that he wouldn't let the Iblis stone take her, even if he had to die for it. Well, he planned to tell her. Now didn't seem like the right time. She'd probably cool off in a bit. So he let her get in her ship and fly off. He rushed back to the Farfarer and followed her, keeping a healthy distance. Zenobia's ship was just visible through the clouds ahead. How could he reason with her? But he had to. The rebels were down for the count. No wonder. He'd betrayed the location of their base and then he'd abandoned them. And if she became Empress while she was in the grip of the Iblis stone, if she became Empress by murdering her father, she could still be a great Empress. But she could also be a nightmare Empress. She had to be stopped. There were more dead ravens along his path, some of them wounded in the back. He knew she could have easily talked her way past them, or clouded the little tiny raven brains with a spell. She was going out of her way to kill everything in her path. This wasn't Zenobia, not as he knew her. Had that door been opened before? So, his beloved was possessed by the spirit of a demon. That's what it meant to be a hero. To brave the darkness in your loved one's soul. To have faith there was still good in her. to help her out of that darkness, no matter what the cost. But what? What could he do? She'd kill him if he tried to take the Iblis stone from her.
Nothing. Get your blood pumping like a bit of killing.
Look down, he thought. At the end of the trail of raven corpses was Zenobia. Her father was frantically rigging a strange apparatus wrapped around a glowing core. "Don't do it!" he shouted. "You'll hate yourself in the morning! Stay back!" She screamed in a horrible voice he'd never heard before. It froze him in his tracks. The Emperor stared at him. "Run!" he told the toad. "Or hop!" But he didn't manage to voice it, only think it. Zenobia stabbed her blade forward, and His Majesty fell dead. She began laughing hysterically. Or was she weeping? "Just walk away," she laughed at him. "I've no more use for you." There was something he needed to do, but he couldn't figure out what it was. So he did as he was told. As he walked away, he felt a chill in the world. The light in the sky seemed to dim. He didn't dare turn. He had a nagging feeling there was something he should have done just then. Something heroic. But he could not have taken the Iblis stone from her by force, and she would not have parted with it willingly. A cold wind blew from where she had been, but he still didn't dare turn. And then, an awful laughter filled the air, and all the torches and all the ships went out, and he realized what he should have done. But by then, it was too late to do anything.
Oh, damn it. He lost again. And died.
But there was burning Ubar behind him. He still had all his destinies ahead of him. But he'd learned another true thing. Zenobia still had feelings for him. He knew enough now, he thought. All these truths tumbling around each other in his head. There must be a way to puzzle the pieces together. If he used everything he knew, he could discover a new path to destiny. The book's pages fluttered to the beginning once again. faster than before, and he fell. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renato knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong, but he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lupino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lupino had betrayed the rebellion, and he had a gut feeling that he needed to use that to his advantage. Renato finally realized that Lupino was a traitor to the cause, and maybe Renato could use that somehow. Renato couldn't quite put his paw on when he'd realized Lupino was working for the Empire. He'd never exactly seen Lupino sending coded messages to the palace, but he was sure. The rabbit had been on too many disastrous missions where he was the only survivor, or where he accidentally missed getting on the boat that went down to the abyss in flames. If Renato could prevent Lupino from getting back to the fleet with all the intelligence he'd probably gathered, it might be worth the trip. How had they come to this? They'd been on so many adventures together. Lupino had talked Renato out of prison at least 4 times, and Renato had rescued Lupino from at least 2 lynch mobs. He'd always felt that the rabbit resented him. Lupino was hilarious because he was so down on himself and everyone else. But behind the laughs, he wasn't a happy camper. Ooh, was this payback? Or did the Empire have his little white tail in a vice? Renato felt restless. Maybe he could focus all that energy into something useful. That could come in handy in a pinch. how could you convince a firewall you're its friend? This chest made music when you opened it. Too bad it was Muzak. Ravens were landing everywhere from dropships. He'd better get moving. If they got to Lapino first, the rabbit would give the Empire all the intelligence he'd been stealing from the rebellion, and they'd probably give him a medal. He'd have to be very careful about how he played Lapino. At the slightest hint of danger, the mad rabbit would take off like a rabbit. Bloody and exhausted, Renato finally reached Lapino. The rabbit was practicing shuffling his favorite deck. Now that he knew what the rabbit was, there were a few things about him that Renato didn't find so amusing anymore. You sent me an urgent message saying that you're in danger. Oh, I am. The Ravens are coming. Now, I got a clever plan to kidnap Zenobia. Renato wanted to clap shackles on the rabbit and shout, "You're a traitor, and I'm not falling for it." But if there was one thing Renato was sure of, it was that the core of the Sky Ripper was dangerous mostly to its user. If he could put it in the Emperor's hands, old Isengrim III might blow himself and his fleet up with it. Yes, that was it. Renato felt like a real hero, brave and smart. He told the rabbit all about the Sky Ripper's God's Eye core. "I'll go get the core while you attack Zenobia," he told the rabbit. "Wait, I've an even better idea. I'll get the core and you attack Zenobia," said the rabbit. "Right, yeah, that is better," agreed Renato. Perfect. The traitor would make sure the Emperor got the core. Now Renato just needed the Emperor to use the core. If he could only get something that the Emperor wanted very badly. Zenobia. He could save her and bait the Emperor at the same time. Right. Now, all Renato had to do was fight his way through Zenobia's invading troops, sneak onto her ship and into her bedroom, and kidnap her without any of her dozens of guards alerting her. Then, he would rely on her love for him to convince her how evil her father was, so she'd run away with him instead of going back to her father, who was going to blow himself up. It did sound a little risky. But Renato had a feeling it would work out somehow. It always did. this chest was really awesome. See what I did there? Tired of doing that, thought Renato. Hey, I'm a firefox, thought Renato. This one looked familiar. Had he lost this one in a card game? Welcome back, he thought. Maybe I should follow my nose, thought Renato. Hey, why don't you guys fight in groups? Oh, I know, because there's no I in team. Renato was halfway to Zenobia's encampment when Lupino showed up. He was disheveled and distraught. They jumped us. I barely got away. Oh, they got the core. Oh, it was all going according to plan, thought Renato. Now he just needed Zenobia on his side. Yes, that was even better. The Iblis Stone. Zenobia could get it. And then the Emperor would have to pursue them. Wait. No. The gem would corrupt anyone, even her. That's it, he thought. Even Lupino. Even though Lupino was already a traitor. It would turn him against his secret master, the Emperor. He would try to make himself Emperor. And the Emperor would have to defend himself with the core. Boom. He was a super genius. The This is terrible, Bernardo told the rabbit. If only I had gone for the Iblis stone. But now it's lost in enemy territory. He handed Lupino a map. It gives the bearer so much power. We can only hope the Emperor never finds it.
What was that?
Said Lupino.
I think someone's following us.
I didn't hear anything.
Rabbit ears. You go on ahead. I'll check it out.
And with that, Lupino hopped off with the map.
Hey, a workbench. He could try out his new bling. Bernardo remembered when he'd first stolen one of these. Good times.
Bernardo slinked through Zenobia's ship, making no sound at all. She was curled up on her bed. He'd forgotten how beautiful she was, how sleek, how soft. He tapped her on the shoulder with his sword. She was made of smoke, and he noticed he had a very solid blade to his throat. "Did you really think you could capture me?" purred a familiar voice. "I just wanted to chat," said Bernardo. "Did you ever wonder why the Emperor adopted you? He needs a sacrifice, someone who truly loves him, to make a bargain with the lost gods." "That's a vicious lie. He wants to bring them back." That's crazy. Why would anyone... They could make him immortal, an eater of souls. And with that, her eyes widened. She understood. Bernardo told her how he had rescued a priest whose order had been massacred, how he had slept in a burnt village. At midnight, the Emperor's victims had come to him in his dreams to tell him of the hideous eldritch rituals they'd been sacrificed in. He could still see those kittens and puppies, their wide, sad eyes, their moist noses. "You can't prove that." "I've got a witness at the observatory." He couldn't tell her, not yet, why he was really here. He didn't want her to be anywhere near the fleet when her father blew himself and Lupino up. So he told her about how the Emperor's obscene rituals had raised ancient artifacts out of the land. How he'd followed the appalling trail of the hideous horrors His Majesty had perpetrated for the sake of his own immortality. "Any of this ring a bell?" he said. "He told me it was all lies." "You've always known when I was lying. I always hated that about you," said Bernardo. The rebellion had started after atrocities that the Empire hushed up. Renato had rescued a priest whose order had been massacred for one book. He had slept in a burnt village. Dead kittens and puppies had come to tell him what the Emperor had done to them. He'd once met a pirate captain. He used hooks to get around his ship. Oh, what was his name again? Don't you think I'd know if my father started practicing black magic? Why? Would you join in? No! I'd destroy his books and I'd... Okay, you're not completely wrong. They've resurrected one of his victims. Well, look, it's not exactly alive, but it can talk. A true witness, she said. What did you do if one of these platforms stalled? We do it, said Renato to himself. The observatory was a burning hulk. Dead scientists and black feathers everywhere. The Ravens had taken special care to burn the reanimated witness to cinders. Zenobia stared at the carnage. He didn't want me to hear the witness, did he? I guess not. What's your plan? She asked. So, Renato explained his brilliant gambit. Sending Lapino to get the Iblis Stone, become super powerful and corrupted, provoke the Emperor into using the core against him, thus blowing up both of them, and hopefully the fleet too. Let me visit your council, she said, shaken. I want to help. Could he really trust her? He'd done it. He'd made Zenobia see how evil her father really was. He wished she didn't feel this urge to join in the rebellion. After all, he'd taken care of the Emperor, right? Yeah, but she'd always been conscientious like that. She told him she had to go somewhere first. So Renato gave her the location of the secret base, and they agreed to meet in the ruins. He had a very good feeling about this. What had Zenobia gone off to do? What was more important than meeting the rebel council? Had he made a mistake, sending her to the ruins? No. He knew they could trust each other. He could trust her because she never broke her word. And she could trust him because she could see right through him. Well, she'd probably be there well before him. She at least didn't have to fight her way through rainstorms of ravens. This is quite the view, he thought. The mysterious sword from the east made you so fast you could catch a fly with your chopsticks. If that's what you really wanted. Boy, if only you had some sort of gun that made horses. Hero wall, hero sword, firewall, fire extinguisher. As he came around the bend, there was Lupino, unconscious on the side of the path, and Renato could smell a familiar, sweet, smoky scent. Who? Zenobia. It had to be. She never used a combat spell when she could use drowsy gas. That meant she had the Iblis Stone. What would it do to her? She hated her father now. She'd kill him for sure. The council wouldn't mind if she killed the Emperor, but murdering her father would destroy her. He had to get to whatever ledge she was on and talk her down from it. Hey, what are you
tell if someone's far away or just really small.
The long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. Nothing was on fire. So far, so good. These walls only let you through if they knew you were cool. Everyone in the council chamber was dead. Zenobia stood shivering in the courtyard, drenched in blood.
Why?
He managed. They started arguing with me. I lost my temper and I wanted their blood. Well, not me. The stone did. Why did you take it from Lupino? I had a plan. You had a stupid plan, she said. I'm going to go kill my father now. No, you can't. You'll just take his place. You'll become worse than him. Get out of my way, or I'll kill you too. You won't kill me, he said. And I won't let you kill the Emperor. Enraged, she raised the sword. You hate him too? He could sense the Iblastone, yearning for his death. But she didn't strike. If you kill him, he'll destroy you. I know you. Shut up! She shouted, her sword trembling. I won't lose you again. Not for anything. Get away from me, he said, and he was very close. I can't lose you again. And he was in reach of her sword now. I hate him! I hate you too! I love you, he said for the very first time. And then she was weeping. He was holding her. The sword had dropped from her hand. He glanced at the Iblastone. It was no longer the black of the void. It looked like coal. No. It glowed, like a cinder. It was crackling, burning, crumbling into ashes. You've always loved me, haven't you? She said. She was weak. The stone had taken so much from her. Always, he said. She staggered as he helped her up. Let me take you away. Where? The island of Avalon. The sisters will heal you. He'll follow us. Then we need the Farfarer, the fastest ship in the Empire. The Empire had seized his ship. They'd have to take it back. The road less traveled, thought Renato. How intriguing. always a rush. And there it was, his beautiful skycraft, the Farfarer. They would fare very far indeed, beyond the Empire, beyond the reach of the Empire, to the mystical island of Avalon. He didn't know exactly where it was, but he knew he could find it. And they would find peace there. Second star on the right, and straight on till morning, laughed Zenobia. And they laughed together for the first time in a long time. Look, it's not personal, but yours look terrible. There was an inscription on the platform. Balalaika lessons with an address. But they did not go unnoticed. Scout ships lifted off, and the long lance of the Imperial flagship. Bernardo turned downwind to gain speed. The Raven ships could pursue, but they couldn't close. The Far Speaker croaked, "Return her and live!" "Go sacrifice yourself," yelled Bernardo. "Then you won't have her either." On the flagship, the Emperor was readying some arcane weapon. It couldn't be. It was the core. A devastating beam lanced out of the flagship. Bernardo zigzagged wildly to keep the Farfarer out of it. Now the Raven scout ships were closing the distance, and the beam was getting closer too. Then came a blinding flash, and the air was searingly hot all around him. There was a thunderous, deafening roar. He could smell burnt oak and burnt feathers and burnt flesh. But when he could hear and see again, they were alive and unhurt. And they were alone in the sky. Zenobia embraced him. They had done it. Through luck and through love, they had won the war. "Avalon, here we come," he said as he held her arms wide in the prow of the boat and let her feel its speed.
Maybe the real Avalon is wherever we're together, she said.
And so, after a bit of an argument, Reynardo and Zenobia went to one of the two Avalons.
The one shrouded in mists, or the one in their hearts. But which one they went to, I'll never tell.
He'd done it. He'd forged his own destiny. Well, he hadn't actually done it. But he knew what he would do. Reynardo smiled at the book. He practically wanted to kiss it. The kid's sacrifice hadn't been in vain. He'd saved the book and saved the world. Reynardo owed him and his mother so much. Reynardo lowered the mainsail and let the Farfarer shoot forward in the breeze. Second star to the right, and straight on till morning. This time, he would win.